Charles White glared at him. Foster guessed that Charles must have weighed upward of 275 pounds, close to twice his own weight, maybe 5 inches taller. Late 40s to mid-50s, a burly, dark black negro, scowling and stinking. "It didn't happen the way she said." "I can argue all that when we ask for a lighter sentence, Charles."
"Shit,"
Charles White interrupted. There were no chairs for the Negro prisoners who had lined up to see their families behind the mesh screen of heavy steel. Charles had to squat to make eye contact with his appointed lawyer, who had been given a low stool on the visitor's side of the screen. The only other white person in the holding pen was a guard armed with a double-barreled shotgun, a measure that struck Foster as ridiculous. He was more afraid of the guard accidentally discharging his shotgun than of the manacled colored men squatting behind the thick steel mesh, and he certainly was not afraid of the Negro women and children on his side of the screen, wailing and moaning for the 15 minutes they were allowed to visit. Having expressed his contempt for his lawyer, Charles White leaned his head back and stared at the prison ceiling, stained in shades of brown, yellow, and olive, the residue from years of mildew, leaks, and worse. "You want to tell me what did happen?" As soon as the words came out of his mouth, Foster almost wished he could retract them. Why go into whatever happened? There was not going to be a trial on guilt. Charles already had confessed. For a flickering moment, Charles White looked at him as if he were looking at another human being. However, he did not reply. "Charles, you say it didn't happen the way she says, but then why'd you sign that confession?" "You don't know? They say I don't sign. They turn around and take me straight back to Troy that night. They say I'm dying on a rope that night. If I sign, they promise I can stay here in this place till the trial, then I can come back here to serve out my sentence." "Who promised?" 5 white men, sheriff, deputy, 3 others. "Maybe we can suppress the confession on the ground it was coerced. But if we succeed, the state may try to seek the death penalty. Are you all right with a life sentence?" "I don't want to go to jail for life for something I didn't do." "If you plead in exchange for a promise of life, not the chair, at least you'll be alive." "Not how I want to live," Charles White said, bouncing on the balls of his feet. Foster guessed Charles was getting tired of squatting in order to look him in the eye, and he thought about standing up, but he didn't. "Charles, I may be able to bargain for less time than life, and make you eligible for parole." Again, Foster almost wished he could retract. He'd never tried to bargain for less than life with eligibility for parole in a capital case. He would have to research it. "I'm not entering a plea of guilty. I want that confession suppressed," Charles White said, staring at his seated lawyer. Foster was surprised Charles even knew what a plea was, much less a motion to suppress. "Well, I think that'll be up to the judge whether to suppress, but—" "Do something for me, lawyer," Charles White interrupted, no longer squatting, towering over his seated lawyer like a dark storm. Foster pushed back on his stool and found his feet. He was still almost half a foot shorter than his client, but it was Charles's mental toughness, not his physique, that left him intimidated and uncertain. This man, if he was going to represent him, was not a grateful church-going colored client from Enterprise who needed his help fighting a foreclosure by the bank, but a strapping, sassy northern black who had already confessed to raping a white girl and was now demanding a trial, even if it meant the state could ask for the death penalty. Though he was also a man, according to the United States Constitution, entitled to